Someone turn.
Okay, I'm assuming we are off mute because you're asking me to call the meeting to order. I can't hear you very well. This is why I was like, I think Fraser's running this meeting. But I'm happy to call us to order. Good afternoon. The time is 5:04 p.m. on December 6, 2023, and this DC State Board of Education working session is now called to order. This month's working session is being held in person at the Marion S. Berry Junior Building. However, in-person attendance is limited to the members and staff of the board and its guests. The working session is being live streamed on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to attend. The State Board will continue holding sessions and public meetings in person. Please visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit or present testimony at a State Board meeting. I'm now going to turn to Director Butler to determine the presence of a quorum.
Representative Williams. Representative Chang.
Present.
Representative Boulay. Vice President O'Leary.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative Best. President Thompson.
Here.
Representative Reed.
Present.
Representative Patterson.
Present.
Representative Kelly.
Present.
Representative Viaflor.
Present.
Representative Washington.
Present.
Representative Yardley. Madam President, you have a quorum.
All right, a quorum has been determined and the board will now proceed with the meeting. Again, I want to welcome everyone to our December 6th DC State Board of Education working session. I want to first apologize for not being in person. I'm trying to figure out how to be multiple places at the same time, and unfortunately have a community meeting about Susan Middle School scheduled over top of our working session. And so in an effort to be able to attend as much of our working session as possible and not be absent from my Ward 7 community, since I am the Ward 7 representative first, I'm attending this meeting virtually. We'll switch, go to that meeting, and we'll be back. When I log off, Vice President O'Leary, actually, after I give this leadership report, Vice President O'Leary has the script and will conduct the meeting because it is difficult for me to do so virtually since I cannot see people in the room. I guess would start with saying that I sent the leadership report a little earlier today, not as early as I would have liked to, but there's a few things I want to call your attention to, and I hope will be helpful to members. First, thank you everyone for your patience with the budget enhancement process. We still have not heard back. We should not have expected to hear back yet, but we have not heard back around which enhancements we've received. At our upcoming meeting with OSSI and DME, we'll be discussing their support for retaining our asset-supported positions that will need to move to local funds. We're hopeful that a united front will be helpful in securing the necessary local funding. Tonight's working session, related but different budget matter, for all the things that are not our agency request. I would love for members to start to put on the table and think about what are the things that we would like to include in our budget letter to the mayor. These again are not agency requests for enhancements, but rather are member priorities that will support education throughout the city. As you all know, we've been doing a lot of engagement around the school report card, excuse me, the past few weeks. I'm looking forward to hearing from members what feedback they've heard so far, and what feedback still may be needed to get us to a vote. In addition, from hearing from OSSI tonight, we will be following up on any demographic and other data that's still outstanding. Please let us know if there are other items for our leadership meeting with OSSI, which is coming up, I believe, next week, that we need to follow up on. We want members to be prepared and have all the information they need as we have to make those decisions together. I want to very much thank all the members who spread the word about the sessions and who facilitated the sessions. And a special shout out to Representatives Henderson, O'Leary, and Patterson for perfect attendance at these 3 sessions and their willingness to act as facilitators. Truancy, one thing I want to note, in addition to the release of the school report card, OSSI also released some data on truancy in the city. There will be an upcoming hearing on truancy, I want to say next week or the week after. I'm actually very concerned with the dialogue around violence and crime in connection to our youth. And I'm hoping we can delve in a bit more intentionally as a state board as it relates to our school climate and safety work. I would love to discuss with you all what it looks like to host a roundtable or panel to identify some opportunities and solutions, maybe consider other opportunities to engage the voices most impacted by this, and hopefully be able to deliver a resolution highlighting some steps agencies can take. I would welcome any member thoughts on this approach. Housekeeping items. Sexual harassment training. You should have received, members, an email to complete sexual harassment training. This is mandatory for all DC government employees. That includes us. So please, please, please prioritize its completion. Next, Healthy School Facilities Network. The report is finally complete, and we look forward. I believe it was sent to members. It should have been sent to members. But it was sent to members, and there was actually a press release from NASB noting our participation in the larger network. One of the next steps outlined is sharing the report with the DME for incorporation into the Master Facilities Plan. The report outlines existing minimum standards for facilities, so what I'm calling the floor for facilities, and recommends steps we could and should take as a city to have a fuller set of standards for all DC schools, both traditional public and public charter. Our goal is really to make sure that we have a bar for what is a healthy, safe, and educationally appropriate school facility. We will be discussing the recommendations and further steps to take. The MP, switching topics, the MBK Summit. Thanks to Tony and Darren who attended the summit the full day. By all accounts, it was a pretty interesting and engaging session. I believe Darren was able actually to take notes in the safety sessions that were facilitated, and we'll look forward to sharing with the board and the committee and incorporating those notes into their larger safety report. We are going to have some conversations around work planning. I want to flag that it sounds like we're moving both the work plan presentations to January to give the committees a little more time to be able to say, here's what is happening, here's what we've planned, here's what we need to think about. And so please take a look at your work plans. Let myself and Bernice know if it makes sense to do some type of closed session where we can walk through ways to share expectations for work plans, and that can guide our work in a more consistent way. And as always, if you have topics or suggestions for public meeting panels, there's a link that is included in the email. Please either lift those things up through your committee or feel free to fill that out as an individual member. That concludes my leadership report. Are there any questions?
I just want to confirm President Thompson, the change in the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So we are removing, item number 6 around the ad hoc committee check-in.
Correct. So I touched base with at least one of the co-chairs today. And it sounds like they would benefit for a little more time. So we're gonna move that to January so everyone can be prepared for that discussion.
Members have any more questions about the leadership report? I'd like to mention one thing, the hearing on truancy is on the 12th of December. It's not too late for you to sign up for this extremely important hearing on not only truancy, but attendance, especially since the report card just came out. And I'm sure you've looked over the attendance reports on the report card. We're in an emergency situation in the city, so it would be great if we could have representation, individual representation at that hearing next week. One other thing, the sexual harassment training is very user-friendly and very informative. It's not long. You don't have to take a test or anything like that. It's worth doing, and it's a mandated thing to be. If there aren't any questions, then I will please adjourn to our executive director, Denise, for her report.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. I gave my first executive director report at my first working session a year ago. This last year has been challenging, exciting, sometimes exasperating, but also fun. I've gotten to do some of the best work of my professional life over the last year. More importantly, to be specific, I had an opportunity to focus on expanding the capacity of the state board team, enhancing the board's infrastructure and support, and strengthening our relationship across the education ecosystem. Specifically, when we talk about internal capacity, I've worked with our team to hire our first ever admin and operations fellow, completed a duty and responsibilities audit for our entire team that resulted in 3 promotions, 2 new hires, and an additional FTE for our budget and operations team. We have also increased our communications capacity by reallocating one of our policy fellows position to become a strategic communication fellow. Moreover, we did an analysis across the agency to really look at how we can expand our spending capacity. We were able to advocate and secure a second P card for our agency and really organize our first ever agency-wide meeting back in November. So that was really great. It was a really great opportunity for me, Tony, and Dan to work together to really share what's happening across the organization so that all the teams and all of the offices really have a sense of what each team is doing and who's on those teams. Over the next 2 weeks, I've already scheduled with each of my specific teams, our budget and policy team, our policy and research team, our budget operations team, and our communications team, individual visioning meetings to talk about the year ahead in 2024 and sort of what the work should look like and what the expectations should be. Some of the main feeders into those conversations are the one-on-one meetings that I'll be having with all of the board members. So if you have not signed up, please do so. I will recirculate the email for you to do so, and thank you for those who've already signed up. Last, during my time over the last year, something that's been really important to me is really strengthening and establishing relationships with our ecosystem education partners. And so I'm just so excited that we got to have a really awesome speaker series this summer with all of the heads and leads of the education cluster. One-on-one time for them to meet and talk to the staff and really share from their perspective a little bit about their personal education journey and what draws them to the role in which they are in. It was very important for me to really help the staff understand that these individuals in these roles play an important part in our education ecosystem, but they are also people, and to really move beyond just the titles and to identify who people are in these roles and what draws them to the work. So with that said, as we are coming to the end of the year, please note our offices will be closed December 25th through January 1st. We will return to the office on January 2nd. It is our goal to have everything for the January 3rd working session up and available to members by December 22nd. So if you have any questions, our goal is to work on all of those things with you all, so that we'll be closed during that time. We have a position open. We are recruiting for the FTE in our budget and operations team. Our procurement analyst position is open. And so we will be emailing the link around so that you can share it with your friends, neighbors, boards, whatever you want to put it. We are looking for really great candidates to help strengthen the capacity of our team. Last but not least, happy holidays and thank you so much. President Thompson and Vice President Leary, that concludes our report.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions about the executive director? Yeah. Don't go away too quickly.
No questions, but I do want to congratulate both Bernice and Kathleen on being with us a year. And I want to thank them because they've really added to our staff and to our board. So thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the presentation of the draft bylaws from our bylaws and standard operating procedures working group. We've been working on that faithfully for the last couple of months, and hopefully we've come up with a great document. I will turn it over to Executive Director to lead this discussion. You have the bylaws in front of you. You have a large job.
No, we are not. So what you have on the screen in front of you is really a timeline of how the work has progressed on the state board's bylaws and SBOE. And so we are at the juncture where it says December 6th, present draft bylaws at the December working session. So we want to start off first by saying thank you to the original ad hoc committee, Representative Boulay, Representative Reed, and former Representative Bernstadt. We took the document that they had and the list of outstanding questions that was left by members of the board, and the working group went through them. We researched, we went through, looked at edits, and made actual substantive updates. So we want you all to please begin to take a look at this. Our goal is to be able to share the final bylaws in January and to share the draft SOPs in January with the goal to vote on both of them in February. So some of the major changes that you will see here. The replacement of student representatives, it will be on page 8, section 312E. We talked about what happens if student representatives needs to be replaced. So we laid that out in the bylaws. We made updates to standing and ad hoc committees on the following pages. There's also a piece based on our last discussion in our meeting, working session last month, for non-resolution votes that happen at working sessions. That is in the bylaws. Placing state resolutions on public meeting agendas. That section is also updated in the bylaws, and the way in which we call the roll and rotating aspect of the order. So those are some of the major changes, but feel free, we did go through all of the leftover lingering questions and answer them. And I would say we, so I should be very clear, Representative Best, Representative Henderson, Vice President O'Leary, Dr. Fleischer, and myself. We have been meeting monthly, a couple times, more than monthly, to go through this and to be very diligent about all the things that we are suggesting. So if you have them, we will also send you a link for SharePoint. So if you want to add anything, we ask that you submit all changes or any feedback to the bylaws to us by December 20th, so that we can prepare the final for you for the January 3rd working session. Are there any questions? I know There was a conversation piece about whether or not presidency would be 2 terms or 1 term. After conversation, the terms are still 1 term. So that was not changed. Look at some of the questions that we
Any questions? We will now transition to our committee reports. Each committee will have at most about 3 minutes to share, followed by 2 minutes for questions, and the committees are listed. I have the first committee, and I think I'm going to read this because there's some important information about hiring, things like that. Members discuss the purpose and potential panelists for the DC State Board. OSA and OMB will host an open house for their renovated space on December 20th. Please put that on your calendar from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. We'd like to have everyone just sort of filter through. OMB has made an offer to a new program associated and is slated to start on January 2nd, 2023. The Ombudsman released their annual special education report. The offices, it's already been said about the offices being closed. The Ombudsman for Public Education job posting went live on November 29th and is scheduled to close on December 19th. The committee finalized the hiring process for the Ombudsman position. The goal is to identify a new Ombudsman by mid-February. A maximum of 20 candidates will be moved from the resume and cover letter review phase to the phone interview phase. That'll be conducted by the admin committee and the SPED Hub manager. A maximum of 10 candidates move to the writing exercise phase. Assignments will be reviewed by the admin committee and the SPED Hub manager. A maximum of 3 candidates will move to the finalist phase. The board members, OMB, SPED Hub staff, and external stakeholders will be the people who will be holding the interviews. Are there any questions about that? Now, we're going to be going through that this month. I think we had 25 candidates or people who had submitted their resumes as of yesterday, and they have until the 19th of December to get that information to us. And then that will filter down. But we settled on how the 3 filtering sessions will work to the final interviews. Great. Are there any questions? And we will go on to the school community and well-being. Representative.
Right. So the School Community and Wellbeing Committee met on Thursday, November 2nd, with the main purpose of preparing for the December panel on mental health and professional development for DC educators. Our goals were to better understand the state of mental health professional development available for educators, informing potential DC council bills, the DC school report card data, and sharing panel testimony with sister offices to inform our work and future engagements. We also plan community engagements and collecting feedback as well to define safety. We stated that we were going to visit 2 to 3 schools per committee member. We're going to engage with the Student Advisory Committee, as well as attend the My Brother's Keeper event on Monday, December 4th. As well as EdFest on December 2nd and 9th. We can stop there. Cool. Thank you.
Great. We're looking forward to that round.
Thank you.
Well needed. Any questions?
I have a question. On the committee report, it says for the upcoming 2024 Spring State Board Engagement. Committee members consider an alternative format. Can you guys share more about that?
During the time, we were wondering if, having one large convening was the best way, of approaching this, as opposed to maybe, each of us going to different locations in the community where we know, we would have a large footprint. And so we were trying to determine if that's the best route, or if it's an alternative route that we need, or if this is an additional route. And so we just talked about, those different options. Did not come to a conclusion, though. Yeah.
Anything else? Just one editorial comment, I guess, or something. We're gonna take the break after the new business. Because as you know, OSSI is coming at the end of our meeting rather than at the beginning of our meeting. All right, I don't think we need to take a break right now. We haven't really warmed up. So, Student Advisory Committee.
So our last meeting was November 13th. We had a presentation from OSCE on student immunizations, and after we had a discussion with the SEC on how OSCE can better push immunization information to families before the December deadline for the school year. And then along with that, well, after that, we had a discussion on safety as part of
Taya, could you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, a little loud.
We had a discussion on safety,
That's much better.
sponsored by our school community and well-being committee. Pretty much just defining safety in terms of course, our school and local communities. And then with that, our next meeting is December 11th. Our agenda is to be determined, but I believe we'll be hearing from Eric Goulet supporting universal out of school time program.
Okay, great. Any questions? Are there any reports from any external committees? I know that my external committee didn't meet in November. Anybody else?
Representative Thompson and I both sit on the environmental advisory committee. We didn't have a meeting, but we received a draft of the environmental plan update for 2023. And feedback was due on Monday this week, so we expect the final updated plan sometime in the new year.
For our committees. We'll now move on to our new business. I want to first ask members if they have any additional items of new business to add to the following list. And you see the list in your papers. Representative Reed.
If we could briefly touch on the students who testified about the environmental activities, just kind of getting a summary of like what our plan is. Is it going to be committed to a committee or something else? So it doesn't have to be a long discussion, but I'm just curious about what we're going to do about that.
I don't, did everyone receive a note from the student?
They sent another updated draft or something like
Right,
that.
but they're going to be presenting again at our public meeting this month.
Can someone forward that to me? Because I am not on any of those emails that are still sent to you all.
Unless I just really like to see. I'll dig it up.
Yeah, so the things that are on the list, we have, the math convening and support for Math Summit request that came from Representative Chang. We're gonna talk about the FY 25 SBOE budget letter of priorities. We have 3 resolutions supporting universal out of school time programming, student representative appointment to ad hoc committee, extending dialogue with the operating procedures working group, and recognizing Kelly Manichuk as the Delegate Educator Award winner. In addition to the request from Representative Reed about the students from school without law. Are there any other items?
All right, so no other new business items. Let's proceed with the list we have. The math convening and support for Math Summit, Representative Chang.
Great, thanks. So, over the last several months, I've had more math educators reach out and ask for our help from the board to move forward what we've done for literacy for math. The thing that they shared with me, and I've now spoken to about a dozen math instructors, math educators, is there's no science of math in the same way, right, as science of reading. And so it's not one recommendation that's being put forward, but rather a ask for our help to take a look at how far math scores are declining, especially during the pandemic, and put voice to and amplify the efforts that are being done at certain schools, but then what we could do across the city to reverse that trend. There's 2 school leaders who have been working with other educators and other school leaders to put on a Pi Day math convening that I think is a really good way for us to get an intro into this conversation. And so my proposal is more exploratory, right? One, an invitation to join me at this Pi Day convening, and then a proposal that at some point in the spring or in Q1, we put together a panel, a round table, however we're currently defining it in the bylaws, together to bring some experts in to explore this. I think what would excite me about this is if DC could help pave the way to sort out what the science of math would actually be and what are actually the most effective interventions to reverse the trend that we're seeing across the country, which is math scores are and fluency is massively declining. One more piece of context there that I found very interesting from the educators I spoke to is in many ways, and this is where the sort of the librarians and school librarians that I meet with remind me all the time, is part of the thing that we always talk about in the literacy space is, how do you practice outside of the classroom, right? And how do you read? How do families read together? And what are the activities that you could do at the grocery store and things like that? And how much of math now is done for you? And so there's just very little chance to actually apply basic arithmetic outside of the classroom, right? I mean, I haven't gotten a restaurant bill that doesn't have the tip calculated for me in a while, as an example, right? And so we don't use cash as much anymore. People aren't necessarily counting change. And so one ask that I've heard from school librarians around this, for example, or like a proposal from them is how do we integrate basic arithmetic into people's lives more? But I think there's a lot there to unpack, and so my ask is more of is there interest to go to this event, and is there interest to have this conversation further in the spring?
For those who are math illiterate, such as I, Pi Day is on the 14th of March. I think that's the last thing I learned about math was where the pi was 3.14. So, and this ties right in just from what you presented with financial literacy. And it's been said, since we're really wedded to the financial literacy standards and things like that, this might be an easy way to pull the community. Any other comments or questions?
I think one of the comments I had, this summer, when President Thompson and I went to the National Education Summit put on by the Education Commissioner of the state, in the literacy workshop, it was paired with a math workshop, and they were talking about how the state of California was beginning to think about what they're revising their math standards, because particularly in what it means to do that earlier, because what they used to teach kindergartners, they're now teaching pre-K. And so there hasn't been a realignment, so that the benefits of pre-K, particularly in math, are often erased by the time the kid gets to first and second grade, because they're just redoing what they did in pre-K, because there hasn't been a realigning of math standards to keep up with the earlier kids are being educated. But that is not the same thing as what's been lost during the pandemic.
Right.
So I think it's part of the conversation, sort of what do math standards look like in that realignment, or how they should shift.
Yep.
To if we're, especially particularly in a place like DC where there is free 3 and 4-year-old pre-K, and they are learning math concepts there.
My sample size is relatively small right now, right? It's just about a dozen. One thing that's been consistent though among the math instructors, and it's all elementary level, that I've spoken to, is they feel pressure from their leadership and then from the broader administration to keep moving forward in future topics, even if their students haven't grasped the topics from the previous day or the previous week or the previous month or the previous year. And what that ultimately means is they're trying to teach algebra then in middle school to someone who doesn't know how to add or subtract. And that is super problematic. And then that teacher would say they're getting the pressure of not actually being able to, don't go back and teach the thing before, and there's also no capacity or time to do so. But then how do I actually, the question I got over and over again was, how am I actually supposed to teach this to my students? I know they don't know the fundamentals that are required for this concept that I'm teaching today to make any sense whatsoever.
And to just throw some thoughts in the pot, not really to make any decisions, but it's interesting to hear the Executive Butler, you mentioned like the pressure in pre-K coming from previously in OSSE. They relatively recently, updated some of their pre-K standards. But I remember distinctly working in Division Early Learning, there was a big protection around children and just like, how can children learn to beat kids and play and those kind of things without the pressure of, because honestly, a lot of pressure is coming from testing from higher grades. So they're trying to like push it, well, we can get kids in a younger situation to learn these concepts, then some of those things won't happen later in life of, being the kid in algebra who is learning how to add. So it's kind of like, how do we protect our youngest children, because early childhood doesn't really refer to children as students, but like, how do you protect them from the pressure of testing? But then in your later grades, making sure kids have the space to just learn the concepts they need to learn without that additional pressure of like these achievement things. Of course, we want students to learn and know, but sometimes that pressure comes because of high stakes testing. So I want to just throw that in there, some thoughts about how do we balance the younger and then the older.
I would think that there are ways, best practices to teach math through play. And questions like, how do you remove the pressure element from that? And I would also ask OSSE, I think it would be worthwhile to ask OSSE, like what would they say they're doing now? Because maybe it's not the most helpful to do the parallel to literacy, but that's kind of a natural reach. But we've kind of been pushing OSSE on like the training. So I don't know what OSSE may already have in terms of training and supporting math educators, and if there's opportunity to expand, like even if there's not like a consensus science of math, I do think it's kind of the role of the state education agency to be, you know, curating the best practices and trying to disseminate them throughout the district.
Yes, so I attended the NASB early literacy and math pre-convening with President Thompson. And they had someone, it was called Math on a Stick. And they started out at the Minnesota State Fair, just doing what Representative was just saying, you know, Representative Henderson was just saying about integrating math and like play and having the children do puzzles. And like, again, at the state fair, you know, low stakes kind of environment. So I really learned a lot from that. And they also talked a lot about math phobia and how just everyone talks about whether they're good or bad at math all the time. And so how doing things like this earlier on in a student's educational journey can contribute to that, as well as again, making sure that literacy and math are paired together. Kind of they go hand in hand for things like this, including word problems, for example. So I wanted to make sure that members heard that example, but I have all the notes and materials. I'll be happy to share as well.
Representative Goulet, who text, Brendan is watching the meeting, has said that he is in for Friday. And we would like to add on to the Sunrise School meeting.
Oh,
I think that part of the agenda.
Dr. Henderson, there is certainly an element of this. I think I heard particularly from the school administrators that I spoke to that they've gone into classrooms and very obviously found that the instructor doesn't know the concept well enough to teach it. Unfortunately, and then there is one thing that's come up over and over again in these conversations too is half of the folks I spoke to love Eureka, which is the DCPS curriculum, and I think and then half of the instructors are like, this is the, you know, if I ask what would you like to change, is the first thing they say this has to go. And then so there's that one again is like it's a bit all over the place. Yeah.
and it changed so quickly. Like, I feel like, again, recently there was a new math or DCPS, new math curriculum adopted. So it's interesting, like we're revisited certain conversations. So it's almost like, how do we also get teachers to learn the concepts, but then also like learn things when the curriculum is constantly changing, even though I know we don't have a lot of jurisdiction over the curriculum, so. Yeah. And I also want to say the early learning standards were updated 2019. So they released in 2020, so still relatively recent.
That was math for early grades or for math?
The way that they do early learning standards is with your babies, like up to pre-K. And they go through the strands, but they incorporate, I believe, all the subject areas in this one document. I can shoot you the link, just so you can see like what the focus is for the little people.
The segue is when the executive director Butler is going to talk about our budget. But
Yes, and so before we have questions, I just want to make sure, any more thoughts about joining the Pi Day meeting other than Representative Goulet? And then we'll make sure staff adds the math panel to the list of panels for the spring and see where it can fit in with other suggestions that have already been submitted for the spring.
I just have a clarifying question. Is the convening and the summit are going to be different things? Or
Yeah, I think in the original email.
Then it's a convenient. Yeah.
sorry, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is the FY25 budget support letter. So one of the requests that came from this group earlier this year, when we did the FY24 budget letter, that process started a little late. Which for all intents and purposes, I don't know if it could have started earlier because we didn't have the members until January. But
We don't have that problem this year. Everyone who is here now will also be here next year. So we wanted to begin to poll you all what some of the education issues that you would like to see, and this includes our student representatives in a budget letter. So annually, the state board puts together a letter to the mayor and to council with the board's funding suggestions. Last year, we asked about literacy, we asked about our school time. We talked about SRO, safe passage, excuse me. We talked about those are some of our requests. And so what the staff would do based on the items you suggest to us, we will go and do research, come up with some numbers for you to look at, and we will draft a letter. And at some point, the letter will be voted on. We are aiming for a timeline at the very latest February. For this letter to be voted on and transmitted to the mayor and council. With that in mind, what are you guys looking to have as a budget priority for FY25 budget? This budget will start October 1st. That's what it's going to be.
I think it'd be helpful to check in on all the things from last year and kind of see
We can do that.
where those stand, and so I imagine those
Well, that's
are a good starting
Check.
point for
Yeah.
continuing priorities.
Anything else?
the other priorities. Staff is taking notes, and we're gonna go back and research.
Question, I can't remember if we confined to education cluster budgets or did we include capital?
We did not include capital requests, but I mean, it is our budget letter, so we can include whatever. We can expand it to include capital. Last year really focused on, I think there were things related to education and not necessarily just education. So like there were some things around mental health supports that deal with the Department of Behavioral Health, which is not necessarily in the education cluster, but related to one of the issues that were most important to the state board. Topics, suggestions. Do you have a topic, Representative Goulet?
I do. So this is for the budget letter, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, several things. So out of school time, I think would be something that I would like to see in there. I'm really thrilled that that legislation got introduced. I would like to support that again this year. I think the second issue that's really important is making sure that we fund the formula. That is the key issue for every school. I think that we fund it across the board. Last year, even though the cuts at the schools were made up, it was at the expense of the technology budget. So that needs to be made up to start with. We need to make sure that we kind of make that whole, because we're playing catch up because we didn't fund laptop upgrades or anything like that last year. So we got to increase that. And then we've got to.
One second, make sure we're writing, what you're saying.
Well, all this comes through the formula. So what I'm fearful of is that DCPS is going to be trying to play catch up with their central office budget, so that we'll see money that would otherwise go to local schools be drifting back to central to fill what was taken last year. That's a fear of mine. So I want to make sure that our local schools particularly get a full inflation increase. And I'm really fearful of what we're seeing. I'm glad, thankful to everybody what we did, but with the chancellor not meeting with our teachers and that we get behind, we're already 1 year behind, the contract's expired. And we've got to build in those raises for our teachers, and we're not going to retain them. So that would be something I think that I would put number one is UPSFF increase. We have our own needs here at the state board, which I support. And lastly, this is something people keep bringing up to me, but I think it's really important, and I want to see my colleagues have heard this as well, is that parents do not like the floating nurses right now at all. They don't like the fact they don't have a dedicated 40-hour-a-week nurse in their schools. And, part of the challenges, I have this at my job, what we're trying to recruit nurses to is nurses are in demand right now. It's a profession that everyone is competing for the best nurses. So increasing the children's contract so that children's can attract and retain nurses in our schools, I think is something that we should think about, because parents, at least the ones I've spoken to, keep bringing that up, that's a concern. So those would be my issues, and I apologize, got caught in some traffic by the White House, so glad to be here.
I just want to double check Representative Goulet that I heard you correctly. So gonna go reverse order. Full-time 40-hour-a-week school nurses to fully fund those for every public school in the district, correct?
Correct.
the state board funding for.
And Bernice, we're not gonna be able to do that all in one year, so I think it would just be to put an increase in, probably to the children's contract, but there's no way we could get to it from where we are now to there in a single year, just given the realistic competitive nature. So some sort of increase, but probably if we put enough in to do that, it would go to waste because we wouldn't be able to realistically hire that many nurses in a single year. So
That makes sense.
I think an incremental plan to try to
Yeah.
get there over time.
So that's what we'll include in the draft budget letter, that we'll send to you all for content. We'll have an implementation plan that expands multiple budget years and thinks about hiring timeframe. So that will include that. Next are the SBOE priorities, and then just want to make sure you want to fully fund or increase the funding, which are two different things, to the UPSFF. So you just want to increase the funding, or do you want to fully fund it?
Well, I mean, I think fully funding is a subjective term, but what I would like to make sure is that the money that was reduced by council from central office isn't being just swept back from the schools to backfill central, which I think is a real concern, you know, as the UPSFF grows, because as a single LEA, DCPS can arrange the money however they want. So what I want to make sure the impact on our local schools is that the local schools get an inflation increase to keep pace with teacher wages, which hopefully will be negotiated soon. But then also that we kind of backfill some of that money at central, because I'm glad the council reduced some of the budget at central. I think that could be done, but I think other parts of it were maybe with more of a chainsaw than a scalpel. So I think making sure our kids have a adequate technology budget across the city is really important for kids who maybe can't afford a laptop themselves, but use their DCPS laptop, you know, for their schoolwork. So I think that's important just generally as an LEA to make sure that there's sufficient funding, I think I would say, because full, we could never get to.
And then when you say the out of school time legislation, are you referring to what was introduced at council?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Are there any other?
I would just support that. I'm looking back at our last letter and we did not address the PSF directly, so I agree that we should have that as like our first item and then do the add-ons. Do that, and then also to adjust to whatever we hear back on the enhancements, like.
So I should let you know, we won't hear back on enhancements until the mayor releases her budget. So they don't come back and tell us before the mayor releases.
So maybe also just reiterate in the letter that like our enhancements, we identified those because they're important.
Sure, could I add one more thing to our letter? And I think this is critical, is the staffing at OSSI right now is razor thin on the busing. Like they cut the budget last year and the numbers have been okay through the summer months, but we're starting to see them slip in the fall right now. And they really need more substitute bus drivers for these routes, because if somebody gets sick right now, they have no backup. And I am very terrified that as soon as cold and flu season hits, that OSSI is going to be right back where they were, because their staffing margin is just so thin right now. So I think we should continue to impress upon them the need to fully staff the busing at OSSI, because that's a real important issue for parents with children with disabilities throughout the city.
Okay, so Representative Goulet, you're up.
Okay, great. I mean, the out of school time resolution, I mean, this is, I got to hear our president speak about, you know, just the youth violence issues we're seeing in the city right now. And I just fail to ever believe that we really have bad kids that are getting in trouble. I think these kids need something in their life that really is, you know, keeping them engaged in positive activities right now. And we see the truancy numbers, we see the violence numbers with these kids. And I think out of school time is the answer to that. I think having positive programs, particularly from 3:30 to 6, that these kids really want to do. I think reaching out to them, connecting with them. And I want to really thank our staff and the committee that looked at this. I think it was the School Wellbeing Committee that really did a great job of taking the resolution I introduced, improving upon it. I want to thank everybody on the committee for their work on it. And, you know, if I could just add one amendment to it that I think would be important is I think I would like to just add support for what was introduced to the council. You know, I didn't know that was coming. I think it's great timing. And if we can be supportive of that effort, given our support for this issue over many years and the great advocacy that's come to our board on it, I would be excited about that. And I think it's amazing because, we're going to get the pleasure of speaking to our youth next on this. And, it'll be a great opportunity maybe for our youth to go down and speak at the council hearing on this, because there's now an active bill on this issue. So I think if it's something that the Youth Advisory Committee wants to get involved with, I think your voices would be really powerful in bumping this up the priority list for leaders of the city. And it's the one thing I would also like to leave open to amend is, we put 5 years in the resolution initially, but the council went up to 2035. But I was talking with Matt about this, and he thought we could probably get it done by 2030. Because, the infrastructure is there in many of these areas. A lot of kids are already enrolled in sports. So if we could and I'll circulate an amended version of this, but go from 5 to 7, just to align with the council's, like the more ambitious timeframe on it. I think that would be a good thing, because I really want to sync up with what they're doing on this and have it be kind of a full push by the city. Because the violence issues we're seeing right now, I think we don't want to get any of these kids in a situation where they're entering the criminal justice system. We want to get them into positive activities before they get to that point. So I'm just really excited about this. I'd ask for your support of the members. I'm glad to take any questions on it. And I always look forward to speaking with our youth on this. I think what's probably one of the most important issues in the city right now is getting the kids into this. So.
Mentioned, I don't know you were following us as you were in traffic or whatever, about truancy hearing next week on the 12th.
Yes, absolutely. I heard you say that. I'll be there for that hearing. And we certainly want to support, if the board wants to give testimony, would certainly support, our leadership of the board if they want to do that. So I'll come as an individual, but I think it's really great. And I appreciate everybody who will come to that. But thank you for your time on this.
So in terms of, I just want to make sure I have all the questions answered. There are comments here. Have all of these been addressed, or how future?
I think so. I think anything that was a question that the staff asked me, I answered. And if there's any follow-up that we need to on the draft.
Is it the OST one?
Yes.
Yeah. If there's any follow-up, that the staff still needs, I'm glad to work that out. And what I'd like to try to do is just with that change to add the support for the council introducing this too, just so we know that that's been introduced. I'd like to just then recirculate a kind of a final draft to members so they can make sure they're good with the language before our youth meet. So then they can vote on the final resolution. So if that works for everybody, I'd like to just send you one more with that, 2 sentences in there just about supporting the council and their efforts.
Work with Sharon on that. You can get that done.
Okay, Darren.
Because our public meeting is next week.
All
We
right.
have to get the final turned around and posted on Friday.
Okay,
This
great.
week.
And also by the SAC meeting on Monday.
Yes.
So. we'll work.
Okay, Darren, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Executive Director Butler, you got the next 2.
Okay. So there's one that is not in here, which is a student representative appointment to ad hoc committee. Hi, student representatives. So glad that you all are here. So we have 2 main committees. We have our school community wellbeing committee chaired by Representative Best. And then we have our state level systemic policy co-chaired by Representative Patterson and Representative Williams. You have an opportunity to serve on one or either of these committees. If you would like to serve, please let me know by Friday. I have received some information from Representative Washington, who has interest in our state level committee. So there is one person who's already shared their interest. It is vitally important that our student members are active as a part of our community work. Your voice matters, and we just don't want, adults to. So if you could either email me personally at bernice.butler@dc.gov. That would be great. And I look forward to meeting with you all for a non-emergency meeting to talk about onboarding We'll make sure you have all your questions answered as to the rest. And so once we have those, we will share those names with the committee chairs. And then we will draft the resolution to be voted on, because all committee assignments need to be voted on. We'll have that ready to circulate on Friday to all of the members. Does that work? The next one, we have a draft of extending the bylaws and operating procedures working group. We are extending it to February 21st. And we wanted to do that because of the bylaws portion. We wanted to make sure the bylaws were done, the SOP portion. So our goal is the bylaws will be done and finalized in January. And then at that time, we get the finalized bylaws, we'll have a draft version of the standard operating procedures. And so what we tried to do is take every question that you all have asked in relation to how things should work. We have been working with our admin operations fellow to go through. And so she is interviewing and documenting step by step, all the things. And she is super talented. And so much so she looked at the list and had additional suggestions of things that were missing. She was like, it would be helpful if you had a section here, like when to, like this is how and when you should engage staff. This is who you should contact for this. She has mapped out process, and she was like, this would be easier if it was a form that they could submit that automatically went to someone like to Roma if they had a bunch of questions, those kinds of things about constituent engagement funds. So like she's been doing a lot of work on that, and we are excited to share that draft with you in January at the January working session, with hopes of any edits of things that you want to add. But the goal is that we want to present it and have time to actually incorporate any edits you have. So that's why we're asking you to move the deadline to February instead of January. You have any amendment suggestions?
Is February realistic? I know we keep like pushing it, so I guess I'm just asking that to avoid like another amendment. Like, do we need to give ourselves more cushion? Or do you think like we can just stop at February?
I think we feel that we can, if February is doable.
Okay.
We extended it.
A couple of times.
Because
No, this is the only time we can.
Oh, I mean, but all the bylaws work
Yeah.
in general, yeah. So I was just like, if there was any way to avoid like another this, like having to do it again. So.
Well, I think one of the benefits is that it's not just us. I think before, we brought in the fellow, her capacity has multiplied me and Daniel's capacity. And I don't know if that makes sense, but like the work she's been able to get done, it's much quicker than we anticipated. Even now, we're like, wow, okay.
It's good.
So we're excited about that.
Yeah.
But we also, for her, she's a senior in Howard. These are two things she'd like to make part of her like applications to graduate school. So it's important for her to get finished before March.
And random, not really off topic, but kind of on topic. Is there any training for like you and like others, like maybe one more staff to do like parliamentary, like to do the actual certification? Do we like?
There is. That is something that I have looked in on my own professional development. But yes, that training does exist.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I know it exists. I was just saying like
okay.
that we actually like funded it and make sure like maybe you and like a what is it? Alternate. Yeah, is also trained.
Definitely add that to this. And I don't know if it's here. Vice President, there you go. Vice President.
all right, the last is the resolution recognizing Kelly Moranchuk as the Milken Educator Award winner. You have that document in front of you. We've been deluged with award winners announced because I know it's public. Mr. Pete, who's a teacher at Cadozo, was one of the national ACET, I think, but he was the educator of the year nationally, or right into that computer AI kind of a thing. just won that award last week. It was a national winner. And that, and for those who also had, the DC Teacher of the Year, this year also. So there's been a lot of, so this will be great. Hopefully we'll be able to invite her to our meeting, right?
Yeah.
Like, did with that last week. Are there any questions of this resolution? All right, so we will. So let's take a,
Oh, I understand, yes, the Green New Deal student.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, what are we gonna do? What's our action plan for addressing the students as it going to committee?
So just give you an update. So Representative Chang and myself have been in touch with the students. They reached back out to us, I think, because the schools are in our wards. And this actually reminds me of another issue I'll add to the budget letter. But we had a discussion with them, and I alerted them to a hearing that would have been of particular interest to them. Councilmember Christina Henderson had introduced a bill and was having a bill on the free lunches, breakfast, and healthy after-school snacks for all our students across the city. And I would like to add that to the budget letter list if we could, supporting Councilmember Henderson on that. The reason being is I think it's really important. It reduces the stigma of kids who come in with free and reduced price lunch. They don't feel any different. Everybody's getting a free lunch if they want it there. And I think it's just something that's a long time coming, and we should have done it a while ago. It's one of the prongs on their Green New Deal. So they signed up to testify for the hearing. Unfortunately, it just occurred during school, and they couldn't get out of class to do it. I told them just skip the day and come show it, but I'm not a good example. So just come down to the Wilson building. It'll be a memorable day. So, but excused absence from the state board. That's one of our powers, right? No, but no, seriousness though. But is what we should do is, I think, work with these kids. They've already sent us the revised draft back, which is really good. I mean, for high school students drafting this, they're drafting it better than a lot of lawyers do. So Representative Chang and I are going to kind of do a red line of it, an initial red line of it. And then since it's so detailed, we're going to try to connect with SBO staff and members, maybe through a document, and then maybe, he and I will co-introduce it. But I think it was just amazing students. I think the challenge for us is that I'm not going to get into this because I could talk all day about it, but the inadequacies of the facilities plan and the boundary study so far are shocking. And something so exciting, like they're talking about, like electrifying our schools, getting green energy in our schools. I mean, it's been wholly absent in the discussion of facilities plan so far. So I'd like to connect them to that process too. But we've had conversations with them and are looking to try to move that forward. Hopefully, they're going to come back and speak again to us.
It just sounds like y'all are closing the loop. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, but they're exciting kids, and they want to come back again and testify again at the next public meeting about the changes they've made to their resolution, and they're going to write written testimony to send to Christina Henderson. So Bernice did. I don't know if I snuck that in a little bit cheating on the order, but like if we could also support that bill, because I think school lunches for kids is something vital for learning, and it's for both public and charter schools. So Representative Chang, I'm sorry to.
Nope, great summary, and well,
Thank y'all.
hope you'll ask them questions too when they come testify next week.
So that works. for
Yeah,
you, Representative Gray?
All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. When we come back, obviously we'll be here. I hope.
Do you know what the topic is?
Yes, the IC, doing report card and next steps. Specifically on the final slide, it says today, what they hope to do is walk a line on what content to include on the report card. They would like to leave this meeting today.
Okay.
All right, we got 10 minutes. It's 6:13, 6:23 to commence.
Yeah, that was.
Now turn over the next 30 minutes to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, who will share updates on the DC report card. Alexander, or you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your flexibility in allowing us to arrive a little later than usual this evening. We definitely appreciate it. We only have, if you wanna, go to the next slide, please. We only have one topic to speak with you about this evening, but it's a really important one, the DC school report card. Specifically, what content should be included on the revised 2024 report card. So this evening, we will share preliminary results from our public engagement work on questions pertaining to the content to be included on the report card. And we will put forth a recommendation on what content we believe we should add to the 2024 report card. Then we will talk about next steps. Finally, we will look forward to hearing your feedback on our recommendations and answering any questions that you may have for us. Again, the questions part is at the end of the presentation, so appreciate you holding on to those burning questions until we end. We have two goals for this evening. First and foremost, we want to align about what content we should include on the 24 report card. We are seeking your feedback today, so we want to make sure we understand what you think about what we're proposing. If there are items that we're proposing that you don't think should be on this, we want to hear that. If there's something that we're not proposing that you think should be on there, we want to hear that. Hopefully through our engagement and dialogue this evening, we can arrive at a shared vision. Please further note that we are focusing exclusively on the content this evening. So we look forward to discussing the presentation of the summative score and the overall visual elements of the report card next month. We also want to make sure that we are aligned on the path forward, because we have, as we have communicated for months, we really need to begin building the report card by February. And so I want to make sure that we are clear on our next steps. Finally, I just want to note that, as I believe you all know, on November 30th, we released the 23 report card. So you may have questions on that as well. We'll be happy to answer those questions as they pertain to our conversation this evening. Thank you very much, and I will pass it over to Alex.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, State Board, for having me back again. Again, Alexander Ju, Director of Strategic and Operational Planning at OSSI. Next slide. I do always like to start this discussion just with our working timeline and work ahead. Again, this slide should look familiar to folks, but just again want to orient folks to where we are in the process. As Andrew just shared, on November 30th, we released the 2023 DC School Report Card. Right now, we are at the State Board working session to discuss the preliminary feedback that we've heard on elements related to additive content for the DC School Report Card, and we're working to align on that. And then you'll see after the line is the work ahead for 2024. Next slide. So the online survey. First, just want to note appreciation for the collaboration and partnership that the State Board has done with OSSI related to the survey. It's been a collaborative survey, one that we've been working together in partnership with. That survey is still online and available for folks to provide feedback on the 2024 DC School Report Card. From the beginning, we've kind of had a goal to receive feedback from at least 100 individuals through the survey. As of December 3rd, the survey has received responses from about 120 folks. Do just want to lift up that 120 number, though. Folks are responding to a number of questions, and when we actually disaggregate that information, that does turn into almost 600 pieces of individual feedback from those folks. And again, that's just through the survey. We've engaged almost 75 people in our in-person engagement sessions. We've probably engaged about 50 parents at EdFest on Saturday, and so we continue to find opportunities to do this engagement. Nonetheless, in response to stakeholder requests for kind of additional opportunities to provide feedback, OSSI has extended the deadline for the survey through December 12th. So that's a newly extended deadline. that will mean that the survey will, in total, have been open for about 75 total days for folks to respond to what they'd like to see as far as updates or iterations or enhancements to the 2024 DC School Report Card. I do also want to note that out of the 120 respondents, there are still a couple of areas where we could look for more responses or we could amplify. I looked to the student representatives on the state board. We would love to have some more student responses, and so we're happy to share the link with you, but if you guys could share that link with the SAC, that'd be greatly appreciated. And then we also would love to have more responses from Ward 2 and Ward 8. So just wanted to uplift that too. Next slide. So the next few slides, we are gonna, as Andrew noted, walk through some information related to what we've seen as far as stakeholders have shared related to the content. We have asked roughly 4 questions around content, what people are likely to look for, what they want to display the most prominently, what is missing, and what could possibly be removed. And so the next few slides will show a number of charts just showing what folks have shared with us, both in the survey setting, but also via EdFest and other engagements. But again, we'll be focusing on the content. And so this first one is representative of what survey respondents are most likely to look for when they go to the DC School Report Card. And so just want to show, on the left-hand side, most of these, actually all the charts will be alphabetical, but to uplift kind of what the number 1, 2, 3 things are, you'll see that academic and growth and achievement data is the first thing that people are likely looking for when they go to the DC School Report Card. That is followed by enrollment and student demographic information. You will then see that a lot of folks are going to the report card to find teacher data, whether that's teacher retention and experience data or information related to teacher and school leader information. And then that is followed by school profile information, and then also information related to school climate. And so those are kind of like the 5 big things that people are most likely to look for when they are going to the DC School Report Card. Next slide.
And I would just say, I know the font is a little bit not that large, but we're trying to give you as much information as we can.
Yeah, thank you. Good point, Andrew. Yes. Next slide. The next question was around what information folks want to see most prominently displayed. And so to draw a distinction between this question and the first question we asked folks was, what are they most likely to look for? The second question is around, of the information, what would you want to be most prominently displayed? That might mean like closer to the top, above the fold, more easily accessible. Again, there are some interesting trends and things that are similar to what folks shared with in the first question about what they would like to see. You'll see that the item that people want most prominently displayed is academic growth and achievement data. That is followed by, again, enrollment and student demographic data, followed by school climate and school profile data, and then rounded out with, again, teacher retention, experience, teacher school leader data. So we continue to see trends related to what type of information people are going to the DC School Report Card to see and looking for. Next slide. Similarly, we asked these same questions at EdFest on Saturday, December 2nd. I know I saw some members there, Representative Lay, Representative Patterson, Representative Henderson, President Thompson. But we, at our booth, had 2 posters up, and we had a pick what you like activity. So we allowed members of the public to take a sticker and to paste these 2 large posters with things that allowed them to select what information they were most likely to look for, what should be the most prominent, just to stick a sticker next to the category that they liked. And we were able to identify the following key takeaways from that engagement. Again, we see that a lot of folks are looking for academic achievement and academic growth data when they go to the DC School Report Card. We also, again, see that folks are looking at the school profile and programmatic information, as well as teacher and school leader information. And then this is also rounded out, at least with EdFest, interestingly enough, but not surprisingly, early childhood environment information. And I think that is potentially linked to the fact that at EdFest, it was primarily focused on pre-K 3 to grade 8 enrollment. And so I think a lot of the families that were there were also going with that in mind too, and likely selecting that one. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll do the same activity this upcoming Saturday at EdFest. That's going to focus on our high schools, and we'll see if there might be any additional trends. But wanted to share this feedback as well and show how it overlaps with what we saw in the survey too. Next slide. Pivoting back to the survey results, we again asked folks what information is missing from the DC School Report Card, right? When we're thinking about how we want to iterate or enhance or update the DC School Report Card, we wanted to make sure we understood what folks might be going to the DC School Report Card to look for, but they could not find. There are really two big things that I think stand out when you look at this. The first, by far, school climate survey satisfaction information. I think we've consistently heard from stakeholders and members of the public that they'd like to see on the DC School Report Card. A little bit after that, teacher retention data, also followed by programmatic and course offerings, as well as class sizes and student-teacher ratios. But definitely want to uplift and amplify that. The biggest thing that I think folks are telling us is they want school climate survey information on the DC School Report Card. Next slide. Write it down for you. Good question.
Can you go back?
We'll do, as Andrew said, we'll do questions at the end. Okay. Going back to the survey, the fourth question we asked folks was, what information and data that's currently on the DC School Report Card did they feel like was the least useful or should be removed? Might not be an element that they're looking for. What we've done with this chart, unlike the other ones, is the items in red are items that are required pursuant to federal ESSA law or things that are approved in DC's state plan. And so you will see that there are things that folks would like to remove from the DC School Report Card. However, many of those items are things that we are federally required to report or are part of the state plan that the state board approved last July. So if we look at focus on the things that are in blue, the first thing noted is none, keep everything listed. The second is related to the school profile information. I think some folks might feel that the school profile has too much information or maybe not the right information. But again, this is interesting because we're also seeing folks say that that is one of the most important elements to them. Similarly, with teacher and school leader information, there are some folks that are telling us that that is information that could be removed too. You'll notice that that bar has a red outline around it because there are some elements of our teacher and school leader information that are federally required. Next slide. Okay, so that's the extent of our charts. So just to kind of recap and provide an overview. So far, and this was at, OSSE has received probably nearly 200 pieces of individual feedback, especially via the survey, probably 50 more additional pieces via EdFest, probably 20 additional more via the public engagement sessions that we've heard. So we've received a lot of pieces of individual feedback related to the content elements of the DC School Report Card. We obviously are seeking feedback on 2 other areas too, but when it comes to the content, we've received a robust amount of individual feedback on content elements. And so based on what the public has shared with us, as well as what data and information is currently accessible to OSSE, and I think that's also a really important thing to note, right? We're taking into account what the public has said they'd like to see, but we also want to make sure and amplify that, like the data that we can only put information that is actually accessible and collected by OSSE, right? If we don't collect it or we don't have it, the opportunity to do it is limited. And so with that in mind, we have several new content items that OSSE is going to propose to be additive to the 2024 DC School Report Card. And I think it's on the next slide that we'll go and get to those. Oh, and I will also note, if you go back, please, I'm sorry, just the third bullet. OSSE is proposing that we keep all the existing content on the DC School Report Card and think about future iterations as content that is additive. OSSE believes in the transparency of data, and if the data is available, making sure that's accessible for parents and families who wish to access. So next slide now. Thank you for this. So the proposed content, we have 5 kind of proposed content areas that were suggested to be additive based on what we've heard from the public and stakeholders via our survey, via EdFest, via the public engagement sessions to include in the 2024 DC School Report Card and beyond. The first is related to programmatic and course availability. What we've heard from members of the public and stakeholders is that they want to better understand programmatically what schools are doing, how they are unique, what might individualize them compared to other schools. And so OSSE would like to build on the school program section of the DC School Report Card, as well as making sure that the collection process for the kind of extracurricular and enrichment activity section is a little bit more robust and thoughtful. And then we also plan to publish data that's being collected through our course data collection program. Right now, OSSE is in the process of collecting course data from all schools and LEAs, and we would propose adding that content to the report card. You know, when we have been engaging with the public, we've heard things like, we want to know if this school has STEM programming or dual language programming. We're trying to be very specific about like, what are those extracurricular activities or subject specific curriculum or out of school time programming or community service. And so making sure that we have the ability to make sure that we're painting a fuller picture of those programmatic elements. The second piece of proposed content is school climate survey data. As we've shared with the state board and the public, OSSE is currently working to develop a district-wide school climate survey. And our hope and plan would be to present data from that survey. Again, that would include feedback from students, school staff, and families on a DC School Report Card. And again, that's very responsive to, I think, what we've clearly seen from the public and stakeholders around school climate being one of those things that is the most important and something that is clearly missing from the current iteration. The third piece is teacher retention data. Just to note that this information is currently included on the 2023 DC School Report Card. However, it is actually not codified in the previous SBOE approval resolution. And it's information that we've kind of come to by agreement with SBOE, but we'd like to make sure that that teacher retention data is codified in a future resolution to make sure that it's maintained on the report card. The fourth item is related to our special education performance report. OSSE, for the first time, released an annual report with a rich amount of data related to special education performance at the LEA level. And so we are going to propose building on that rich data and including some of that additional information on the DC School Report Card. And then I think finally, number 5 would be a student to teacher or student to adult ratio on the report card. Again, this was something that I think folks amplified as something that they'd like to see, and I think would provide stakeholders with another piece of valuable information. So those are the 5 proposed content areas. As Andrew said, you know, this evening we're really looking for feedback from you all on these proposals. Does something seem missing? Does something need to be clarified? We'll go to the next slide. I think Andrew's going to talk through kind of next steps before we turn to questions.
All right, thank you, Alex. So again, just want to make sure that everybody is aligned on what comes next as well. So today, aligning on what content to include in the 24 report card, as well as our next steps here. By December 12th, on December 12th, at the end of the day, we'll close the survey, the public online survey, which again, anybody listening can go and fill out currently. And then in the January working session, we will debrief on our November 13th and December 4th joint engagement sessions, which were on the display of the summative score and the overall visual display and the elements therein. We'll answer any outstanding questions about the 23 report card that remain unanswered, align on key display features and presentation of the summative score. So again, today we really want to get aligned with you all on what content to include. Then in January, we'll get aligned on how to display all of that great rich data that we are collecting. And then February, align on resolution language, any outstanding issues, the last issue that may remain. So we get a vote for approval on the February public meeting so that we can actually begin building, or if you wanted to do in January, I won't stop you, but or so we can align and then actually start to build the report card in February. Because again, if we are not able to begin building it by then we may have to look at either reduced amount of changes or a 2025 report card, because the timeline to have the CIO team actually get to build is a genuine one. And with that, would love to hear your thoughts on what content we can include in the 2024 report card.
All right, I guess the easiest way to do it is, does everyone have questions? Just raise your hand if you have a question. So everyone has questions, so why don't we do it the way you're supposed to?
Okay, well, we are gonna start with Representative Boulay and Henderson and Reed.
I get to be first, all right. Alex, I just want to thank you for your leadership on this process.
Oh, you don't have a question?
Wait, was I first? I thought I heard I was
Yeah, no,
first.
you're first, just wanna make sure. Go ahead.
Okay, just want to thank you for your leadership on this process. I mean, you were there at Ed Fest, you've been there, and it's like night and day. This has been the day, like a really transparent process, a lot of outreach. We have the night, which is the school boundary process, because everyone's in the dark on that still. But I want to really thank Ati for this process. It has been really special. The community feels like they've been listened to. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to talk to a bunch of people. I do my market polling, like sidewalk office hours, and the issues that they've raised. I wasn't sure if your list included AP courses and specials. Is that encompassed in that language?
Yeah, that would be in the first bullet, the programmatic and course availability,
Okay.
that would be encompassed.
Because that was the number one thing everybody mentioned. You had after-school opportunities, OST, you had that on the list. You had before care, after care on there. You had class sizes, student-teacher ratio. And you had, I think, teacher and principal like experience on the list. So those things were all on there already, so that's great. The other two things that people mentioned, the availability of pre-K 3 and 4 was the second highest issue. And when you go around EdFest, I mean, the one thing that jumped out at me is all of the elementary schools except for Ross and Lafayette, they've got pre-K 4 or pre-K 3 up there. All of Ward 3's schools said pre-K 4 to 5 on the signs. And it's just, people are tired of it, and they want to not only see the pre-K offerings, but also have them at the school. So that was something that people brought up over and over again is, will my kid get into pre-K 4? Will it be locked out in a lottery? And then they're shocked when they realize there's no pre-K 3. So that would be something they want to see on there, on each of the report cards. And the other thing people mentioned was school nurses. That's something that has come up over and over again from parents about being really important, and something really important to the climate of the school. They don't like the floating nurses. They want to see how many hours a week a dedicated nurse is going to be there. They're not thrilled about the allied health professionals, just to be honest. So
Without sort of going into the content of what you were saying
Of
there,
course.
I would say that those elements are included, nurse availability and the pre-K, if it's the grade served is also on the report card currently, and so we are proposing to keep it.
I just want to say you guys done a fantastic, amazing job on this, and just thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am supportive of the proposed additions. I would say, for the student to teacher ratios, that's something that was raised in the last engagement was student to specialist ratios of different types. So counselors, I don't know about maybe would include nurses, maybe that would be tricky if there's not a nurse per school. I would like to see that as well. And say it again in January, but just so it's not coming too late, I would not like something to score on the school profile page. I think the programmatic section is really important, and that's what comes up in my conversations, including with students, that they want to know, what does the school offer? And that's
Yeah, there we go. So, when I got back in town on Sunday, I was scrolling through Facebook, getting caught up on life, and I saw the Aussie post of the Ed Fest and saw the hands-on activity. And I saved it because I was like, yes, that is exactly what, for me, I was envisioning folks being able to get their hands on and be able to do. And I'm sorry, I didn't make it. I got my Saturdays all mixed up. But when I saw that, I was like, yes. So I was glad to see you all, took that feedback and got it incorporated. And it seems like you had a good response. It'll be interesting to see what happens this Saturday, with, how the older families respond to that kind of level of hands-on. It'll be interesting too. Like, are you all, and this is could be hypothetical, like, are you all planning to do like a different display for like the early grades versus upper grades, depending because of the unique needs? But I'm also kind of like, I know you need a standard template, but it'll just be interesting, like if you see drastic swings in what the high schoolers want versus the younger grades, would that be something OSSI would be open to making a more catered profile for that? So thank you. A long way to say thank you, but I was happy to see it. And it was also interesting to see the display because when we previously did like the big state board survey response, that a lot of that was what we were seeing as like things that people were interested in. So thanks. I'm curious, I noticed like between the graphs, there's like some back and forth between like the survey seems to go directly for like growth versus an achievement. It's two different, or I'm sorry, they're lumped together in the survey. The engagement, the hands-on engagement, they were teased out. But they still seem pretty, I was just curious about like, how are you all planning to take that information? Yeah, with those two, like teasing that out. I don't know, I will leave that there. My next one is, no, I'll leave that for last. For the special education performance report. So I quickly like looked at that. I did not know that existed. But it was LEA level. So it's kind of like, is that the appropriate way of displaying special education information for parents or families or whoever needs that information? Because I just clicked on DYRS's, which gives DCPS's data, which it's like, they're talking about Part C to B transition. And it's like, at that age, you're a little older, you don't really care about Part C to B transition. So it was just like, is that because of what we have at the moment? And maybe we're looking for something more customized for that population too. The overarching question is like, what is the state going to do about it? I know that's not a content question, but I wanted to insert there. Like, if we are seeing trends in like OST programming, or we starting to see like, can't remember one of these examples, but any sort of like, or course availability, like how is OSSI or the city going to support making sure that all students have equal opportunities throughout the city, no matter where they select going to school? And my last plug, which I haven't said this to you all as a team, Alex probably heard me say this previously in his other role, I still really much like the My Child Care DC formatting, because it includes capital quality profile, which is the Department of Education mandate, but it also kind of gives you like, you can start by your whatever zip code, you can start by school name, and then it gives you like whatever the profile is, it gives you some over like laying information for like the child care centers. And I think personally, something similar for however we present the information, the report card could be helpful, because it gives that balance of what is user friendly and then what actually like has all the reporting requirements. So that's the end of my thought points.
Do you want me to-
You
I'll start
you start and then I'll fill in,
Okay.
but thank you.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you for your idea. That feedback definitely informed our decision to make the chart, and I think we thought it was a great idea, obviously, because we did it. So.
And how many did you get? You said, I couldn't hear, it was 150 or 50?
It was probably about 50,
Okay,
and
cool.
It's
a good sample.
being there, like, I had some, Representative Patterson may say this, but I had some really good conversations where, someone would come up, not really know what the DC school report card was, we talk it through, then I scanned the QR code, opened up the like tool on my phone, like we looked up their kid's school and like we're able to show like when I'm talking about these categories, like this is what I mean. But it was really, really powerful. And I'm looking forward to it being employed this upcoming Saturday as well.
Did you capture more on those participants?
You know, we didn't, and we thought about like whether or not to, but I think at the end of the day, we didn't want to inundate people with like, now tell us all these things about you, because we wanted just them to like get some quick feedback from them.
Yeah,
But
the
we did not.
snapshots were helpful,
Yeah.
kind of, even as a person who wasn't there, just looking at what you posted on Facebook, I was like, oh.
Yeah, the two charts, we could have visually put up those pictures, or just go to our Instagram probably.
On your question about the achievement versus growth, we do have that data captured independently. There are a few areas where we combined information like feedback on teacher experience and teacher retention just for chart purposes, so it's not overwhelming. So, but we can provide that information broken out in greater detail if that's something you're interested in. On the CPR data, we were thinking that would be at the LEA level. It wouldn't actually be on the school report card, so it would be at the LEA level.
Because I wonder, like, if a school within the LEA happens to do a really great job with their special education population, whereas like sometimes they might get swallowed in the LEA because of either the size, resources. Like I'm picking on KIP right now, like it's a big LEA. And of course DCPS, but there could be outliers that do great jobs. So I'm just kind of like, if I were a parent who was clicking on that, would I have a hard time because I'm looking at LEA data versus like I'm going to enroll my child at this school? Just a thought.
I appreciate that feedback. There was the question about how we're then going to support equal access, I believe. And so I think that the first step is transparency, and that's what the report card is really about, is bringing that transparency to spark those conversations so that we're seeing all the dual language programs are in one part of the city, and like we then maybe would have good evidence to say this is something that the city needs to look at. But I think for this purpose, it's really a transparency conversation, but then that's the right push ultimately for policy making for sure. And I think on the My Child Care, do you see that's more of a January conversation? So
yeah, but I just wanted like,
yeah,
just having on your radar as you're clicking around websites, you know, looking. Thank you.
Okay. I took the survey. I can't remember. It is aggregate between the demographics of like what a person does. Does it do that? Does it say like you're a parent? Does it identify that?
Yes, it did.
In the report, in the ones that you have received thus far, can you give me a percentage of like parents versus something else? Whatever else they may do, because I'm trying to, since this is supposed to be a parent-facing report card, to get the demographic for how many parents who are going to use it and make decisions about school, what that percentage looks like. While you're looking that up,
I'm just gonna make a quick calculation, but I have it for you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. The second one is that this one may not make you happy, but our committee has a meeting on the 21st. Me and my co-chair, and I want to ask that we don't make content recommendations tonight for the mere fact that, first of all, I want to get to the 12th and get that information. I want to also try to make sure that we get more representation from 2 and 8, like you suggested, and also see what comes out of the Ed Fest this coming weekend. I don't want to be presumptive or anything like that and what that data may bring and how that may change numbers at all. I don't know if it'll change it widely or not, but asking for 9 days, I hope is not too much. And then our committee could recommend based on what comes out of that, what, going into that, what we would like to do if the board as a whole can say we can make that recommendation.
Yeah, I think for my purposes, when I'm talking about alignment, it's really just a conversation, like as much as we can align, but I understand that there are processes that you all have to go through and ultimately be through the resolution.
I think we're almost there, but we just want to get that last bit of information to inform us. And coming out of the committee, I want to make sure that we give you we've heard, as much as we possibly can. Kind of like what we did with social studies. We've heard and we've given opportunities for everybody to chime in. And this is what the committee is for recommendation as well. We're all in line and put that forward if that's possible.
Okay. And to respond to your first question, Representative Patterson, so just over half of the folks who who responded to the survey identified as a parent or a caregiver.
So about 50%.
Yeah, about 55%. But it's to remind folks that they were able to select multiple items. So you could say, I'm a parent, but I also work at a school.
Right.
So, but over 50% of folks said that they were parents. Over a third of folks said they work in a school.
Okay.
And then over 20% of folks said that they kind of work in the education ecosystem.
Okay. And I remember seeing those. I just wanted.
But the majority of respondents did self-identify as parents, which I think is important because I think as we're thinking about the DC school report card and this tool, it is supposed to be a parent-facing tool.
And I appreciate that. That's why I asked. So thank you for the information. Yeah, that was it for me.
All right, students. You have any questions?
We'll be talking about your school.
Does any of that help you pick a school if you decide to start all over? I know you're about to graduate.
So the ball is in your court for our January session. Students, okay? Y'all are gonna do some polling.
Right. We might have students at our committee meeting on the Thursday.
Right. I know we'll have one of them. We'll speak to John and identify to come to the committee meeting on the 21st. Okay.
Here's our plans. Teacher retention codified. We can work on that. Something about academic proficiency was on that slide that had the red and blue thing together.
Yep. It's like 10.
What does that mean? Does that mean? Because does that mean how they did on a standardized test?
Yeah, so that would be, yes, that would be related to the measures that are related to academic proficiency on the DC school monitor. So yes, their performance on the statewide assessment.
So is there any, I mean, you all talked about any other ways to find out what academic proficiency is besides a standardized test?
So just to recall, the ones in red are the ones that are required. So that the proficiency on the statewide assessment is
There's a federal requirement. Like we are required.
Is there anything else that goes along with? I mean, coming from a school whose academic proficiency on the standardized test was not very good at all, but there was an awful lot of academic proficiency going on. Shouldn't that reflect in the report card itself? So that a school can.
Well, one advantage of the summative score, I will say, is that it has the state board approved through the resolution in 2022 was that it really placed an emphasis on growth. And so we see that even in schools where is a lower proficiency rate, we may see higher growth rates. In fact, we've seen that in the 23 report card. And so that is showing that alignment between proficiency and overall scores is much less now. And so thanks to the revisions that we've made, we are seeing that difference. But I hear you that there are certainly other ways. I think that if you have ideas for how to capture additional data in that respect, we'd be happy to hear what your ideas are.
I have an idea, but I'm not sure. What I am going to share is the test is given to 3 grades, right?
No, it's more than 3.
So the park assessment.
Right. When the park test was given, or when our test this year is given, how many grades take that test?
So it's my understanding that, you know, in the early grades, so I think it's grades 3 through 8, like you take the test. And then in high school, it depends on the subject when you take a test. What you might be thinking of, Representative Leary, is the NAEP assessment, which I think is only administered for grades 3, 8,
in high school was given to 10th graders.
Yes, but I think there are some changes now because with the the part assessment, in high school, it's given based on what classes you're taking, right? So there's like an assessment for geometry, there's an assessment for algebra 2, there's an assessment for English 1, there's an assessment for English 2. So I think it would depend also like when you're taking that in the course of your,
If we had schools in the, especially in Ward 4 and in Ward 1, whose population is highly transitory, so that a student could have gotten to the high school in the 11th grade. How is that student growth for the next 2 years shown on the report for that school?
so the growth calculations and I'm not the expert and we can get back to you on this, but the growth calculations do require some backing where you have to like figure out like we'll get back to it.
I will also just say that again was part of the process that the state board voted on in 2022, and so is not is outside of the conversation that we're having here, which is really about the content to include. So again, if there's additional content items, I think.
All right, I have some content item, which would be, if you thought about asking schools to provide their profile with all of the changes that are going to go on this, as you just showed us the 5 different changes that are going to the new report card, so that the school can look at those 5 bullet points and say, this is what we're doing in our school. We want to add this to how it identifies the school.
So the process today and how it's been, I think, since 2018 is the LEAs provide us with all of that school profile.
I understand that, but that's
and they validate it as well.
What Representative Reed was talking about LEAs.
Yeah.
You know, that for single school LEAs in Ward 4, that's one thing. But if you're talking about DCPS and you're talking about all the schools in DCPS or the 13 high schools or 15 high schools or the 60 elementary schools or whatever, you're talking about individual schools, and the report card, when the parents are looking at the report card, it should reflect, it doesn't reflect DCPS. It reflects an individual school.
And so I think if you, I don't know if you want to go to slide 12, but on our first bullet that we are proposing we add to the report card is really to try to tease that out a little bit and make what makes the school unique, right? So if the school is really focused on dual language, program, I don't want to give an example to name a particular school, but then that is something that the school would then be able to sort of highlight through this. And so that is something that I think we are aligned with and really trying to amplify in our proposal.
We are agreeing on that. Is the information going to go down to an individual school?
Yes.
Rather than this an LEA?
Yes.
Because
there's
like if you're talking
profiles for both. There's school profiles and LEA profiles. You should be able to see both of those. There's school profiles for individual schools and LEA profiles that are like all of them combined. So both of those are out there.
So like an LEA, like KIP would have one, and then the individual schools, the 20 different schools will have one as well. Okay.
Right, but if I'm a parent and I'm looking at the school I want my child to go to, I want to know why I want that child to go there. Not from above, but from the school itself. I don't think it would be a big ask to send out a survey to each individual school to tell what they would like to add to their programmatic and course availability.
Talk about that. I believe that our traditional approach is to go through the LEAs as the SEA, with the state education agency. We go to the LEAs and then LEAs go to school, but I'm happy to talk with the.
I think, and each LEA, I think, has their own process for the way that they're reaching out to their schools to make sure that they're capturing that information and then filter it up to us at the SEA.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I hope that I can say our problem with Representative Reed is we're not talking about an individual school, we're talking about a huge, the hugest, if there's such a word, the most huge LEA, which has that all the schools. And they're giving you they're giving you a thing. And I think that what we heard from in the engagement sessions, were people wanted something that reflected the heart and the sinew of an individual school rather than some huge body that didn't exist. I don't know, that's a horrible note.
Vice President O'Leary, can I recommend that maybe we think about ways to add that to the report card, and you can either send it to us or join our committee meeting with recommendations of how to do that?
Okay, yeah, that's, okay, thank you. I think that's, oh, I did have one other question. What is the possibility of having a report card for secondary schools and a report card for elementary schools?
So I think that's a question, I think it's a little bit similar to what Representative Reed was suggesting, this idea of like whether or not the way that the two schools are presented differs based on what information is important to them. At this time, you know, OSSI has, I think, 4 frameworks in place for how it does its school level data. So, you know, elementary school and pre-K, elementary school on its own, then a high school framework, and then an other. But I think there definitely are potential, you know, we can look at that again. I think it'll be on the presentation piece on January, thinking about what does it actually look like when we present it and how could it be different, you know?
Because there's information for a secondary school that is different than for elementary.
Correct. And
vice versa.
Yeah, and for example, not to get too in the weeds, but like an example with the current report card, right? If you go to an elementary school, you will see that there's a specific metric there for early childhood school environment, right? That metric does not appear on the high school.
Okay.
Right? Or if you go to high school, you'll see something for graduation rates that does not appear on elementary middle school, right? So there are already clear distinctions between when you go to a high school based one or an elementary school based one. You're going to find different sets of data based on what information would be relevant or available for that given school.
Which takes me back to dual language school, because not all schools are dual language. But do all the dual language schools in there, is their profile going to have that as one of those programmatic and course availability?
That is what we're recommending, suggesting.
Thank you. She brought it to us and we'll get the blood flowing. We can't wait to see you in January.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you all very much. We appreciate your time.
We will now transition to a short internal discussion to debrief the DC school report card engagement sessions and confer with members regarding the next steps. Representative Cotton.
What is it?
No, that's what you
So essentially, this is an opportunity for the board to discuss their thoughts on all 3 engagement sessions. This is what you all think. Were there enough sessions? Did you get everything you needed? Are you suggesting more sessions? What were you just like sort of have a board share out thoughts about the overall engagement process that with the joint sessions with us?
And I'll be happy to start. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. Very happy that they gave us those 3 sessions. For those who could attend those, I know those who attended like the second one, that was kind of problematic because it spoke to the summative score, which is a very big issue. for so many people, where it's placed, and I still don't have all the information as far as what came out of that, because what we had to agree upon, because it was cut so short, it was an hour, was what, they added some office hours, so we don't have that information. And as that is one of the strongest areas, people feel very, they have strong opinions and passions about summer school, where it should be placed, how it should be aligned, and those type of things. So that is the one meeting that I would say was the most contentious, not well thought out. A lot of the mentee services didn't work, so people really couldn't give their opinion. So I would really like to know what came out of the some of the office hours.
We
I
did not
believe-
have anyone attend office hours.
Okay, so no one attended the office hours, even those individuals who expressed dissatisfaction with the meeting itself. Okay, that's unfortunate, but overall, I think the sessions were pretty well done. I kind of wish we would have had a little bit more in person, because I like the engagement of the in-person one that we did have, that we got to go around to tables. The facilitators, I want to thank you guys. You guys are amazing. To get people's juices flowing and really work with those. So I hope we do these type of things going forward when we're having any type of community engagement. Yeah, that would be my overall summary.
We, all of them bore fruit. First one probably bore the most fruit because it was live. And I mean, when I say live, I mean in person. The last one was, Ossie listened to the comments about the second one, because it was the first time we did it, and there was some technical difficulties, as Representative Patterson mentioned. So the third one was an hour and a half rather than an hour, and it covered a lot of ground, and we came up. It'll be interesting to see, because Ossie is going to be telling us the results from those 3 meetings on our working session in January. We got more done probably this last half an hour, as far as talking about the things than we did in the first virtual meeting, I think. But I thought it was productive. Whether we should do another one, I don't know. The information we just got is new information. We should be sharing with our communities, and we don't have a meeting with Ossie until January, but the superintendent is sent to us on next week. We meet with her on Monday,
Yes.
and I'm sure they will talk to her about what went on tonight, so we don't get a chance to ask her questions. But the student representatives, it's really important that y'all bring us information from your fellows about what would you like to, how you would choose a school, and bring that information to us. What is the second year?
I just asked that question, Mr. President, and that's Monday. So I was kind of going to suggest if you guys could kind of take the survey in that particular ones that you haven't already, to have that, so we could get that input. I think it's very, as Vice President O'Leary says, to get you guys' input. If it's just from the SAC, please try to share it with other people at your respective schools. But we really want to hear, because, it does have an effect on, who are your classmates as people look at it and see where they're going to enroll, your future classmates, whatever the case may be. So if you guys could get some input on that, that would be great. That'd be really great.
Representative Henderson.
So I do think there are some limitations to doing the joint engagement. And like, I haven't had as much experience as some of you have to compare to others, but considering like the social studies engagement, where it was kind of dual track. Cause I think we gain a lot from the back and forth. Like with the social studies standards, there was a fair amount of like back and forth between the board and OSSI. Whereas here, if we're aligning too early, I think we lose some of that. And I think especially as somebody who is not on the committee, I felt, kind of too far removed from some of the alignment that happened, say, for example, on the survey. So I know that like they brought a draft survey to us. I don't remember when. We provided some feedback and like, I recall Representative Williams, for example, saying something specifically about one question. That wasn't resolved at that meeting. And then, so to me, the resolution became apparent only when I took the survey. And so that kind of made me feel like, wait a second, like, the board's name is on this as well as OSSI's. I'm not sure how that alignment happened, because that was not the way it was last left from my eyes. So I don't know what happened between the committee and OSSI after that, but that did kind of leave me feeling out of the loop on that. And because that's another one of those opportunities for us to like do something possibly a little bit different that allows for more of that, back and forth.
I think it's just cool.
Oh, yeah. So I'll chime in and say, I know for me, I did not make it to the engagements, the current engagements. However, when I first got on the board, this whole thing was, as you remember, we were knee deep in ESSA, and we actually were doing a lot of work about content and how it looked versus the formula. So we were collecting a lot of data related to this stuff, which is why I'm like not kicking myself for not going above and beyond, because we still need to do stuff with the information that we received when we first got on the board, where people were saying they wanted to see like these kind of things with school climate, teacher retention, those kind of things. I'm almost to the point for me, it would be helpful now or I'm ready to get to the step of like, I have something I can take to community members and they can like reorganize, say this is helpful, this is not helpful, or should see whatever OSSI's template or model is, and get feedback that way. Because I feel like we did a lot of, I was going to ANCs, I went to the ACC, I went to schools. Like I'm now to the point that I'm like, I just want to see the thing. And I want my community to see the thing and be able to make adjustments that way and be able to explain it versus all these individual components. I'm ready for that part of the process. So I'll be very transparent. I know I did not do a whole bunch of the engagement this time, but because we did so much engagement around content and structure, I'm ready to see like the community members to start being able to tinker with that or be able to give feedback to a model of a report card.
And Dr. Reed, I can truly appreciate that because I've been on both committees,
Oh,
both
yeah.
times, both iterations, and co-chaired them both times.
It was one of the rare times where they got, we're not the last in survey data.
It was interesting for the simple fact that you're correct.
Mm.
Even the time when we were doing the metrics, we were actually going to look at the design. A lot of people didn't understand that it was bifurcated in the sense that we were first doing accountability metrics first and then doing the report card. So they gave us all their information and a lot of things because they wanted to weigh in. And I truly appreciate our staffer who kind of like the very first thing we said in our meeting was like, bring all that information to the forefront because we don't have to start from scratch. And we have collected a lot of information. I will say this as well, that since I was on the task force way back, this is a lot better than previously. When I was on the task force, all they did is they met in this room, basically. And OSSI would come and just present stuff to us and say, this is it. And we really didn't have a whole bunch of input. And then they checked boxes off. They put the onus on us to go out and do community engagement. And they really didn't support that. And then so you didn't get real information. Are there things that we could improve? As like you said, Representative, I think there's things that we can improve on, but it was a good lesson and it was an improvement on our prior processes. And we tried to make sure that we took copious notes. Kathleen has been wonderful in making sure, like, if someone said something in a meeting, that was the very first thing she brought up in a committee meeting. It's like, Representative such and such said this in this particular meeting, we need to make sure that it's happening when we go back out, or this gets corrected. So
Like
I
even
will say
the
that.
charts that I was able to see from their snapshots from Saturday, I was like, yep, I was seeing data, pretty much the same evolution of data that we previously collected.
Right.
So I also think, like you're saying, like kind of being on the outside of the committee this time around, looking in, I'm wondering, would it be helpful if we kind of did the same process of how we did with the formula now with the outline or the display of like, do we have collective agreements as a board that maybe the committee can draft, get down, like how we did last time, and then we had like 12 agreements and then we had to vote on a couple because
that's
we
what I
couldn't.
was trying to get to.
Yeah.
When you were asking that question, for our leadership, was that when we did the metrics, which I appreciate that as well. We kind of like gave recommendations, we went back to the committee, we voted on those recommendations, then we brought it to the whole. But we did have a report or recommendation that came from the committee. And I think, as you're saying, I think we should follow suit in that. I think that was a good way because everybody got to kind of say, okay, we heard from Aussie, we heard from the committee, now let's vote on which ones we want to have. And it was a good process. And even if we didn't agree on every single thing, everybody was bought into the process was fair and they got to vote on it. So.
Yeah, we ended up agreeing on more.
Yeah.
And we disagreed on
Yeah.
it.
I think there was only two that we did not agree on. So we came away with 10 out of 12.
It might be helpful if like now the board, if we start doing some things like here are agreements as a board of what we're gonna rally behind on display information. Like I like your idea of Representative Leary, or our idea about if schools can display some sort of customized page of their own that highlights their programs. Those kind of things would be great next steps, I think, to at least get, are they thinking February-ish for votes? So like as a project between now and January. Oh, shoot, January 7th.
Yeah, just to follow up, so I think it is interesting to think about because you got a lot of data that last go round.
Like 900 responses.
So maybe more than this last one. So just maybe reflecting on why that was the case. And I don't necessarily want to say that the onus has to be on us to do all that, but I think it's worth asking about that. And then the other thing, and I wasn't like questioning the work of the committee, just that I couldn't see it.
No, I just wanted to respond to that. Yeah, I know your question.
The other difficulty is like Dr. Reed said, like it's different in that this is all and then we're gonna have the actual thing and then vote immediately at like a month later. So there's no iteration on a proposal as we did with like the source.
And I think that we, we're on our clock. As far as I'm concerned. All right, I know they have needs, all right, but we need to have what we want. I'm not what everybody wants. We don't have to satisfy everybody's wants. But we need to make sure that the report card reflects what the State Board of Education wants it to look like. It has in it. If that doesn't happen by February, then it happens in March.
And I'm very concerned, as you say that, Vice President O'Leary, about some of the score, because that was the thing with the stars, and it was the distraction the whole time. I don't think people really wanted the stars before, but it got pushed to a certain way, and they didn't feel like they were heard. And then so that was the whole debate for the whole time that we had the stars. I would hate for some of the score people not to. We don't respond to all the concerns about some of the score, where it should be placed and things like that, knowing now that we're going to happen, but where it's placed, the content and stuff like that. I'm really concerned about that particular part, where it's placed, all those type of things, which I don't have a clear understanding of, even as a committee member and co-chair. And I don't want that to be the narrative that, okay, we created a new report card, but all we're talking about now is that summative score, because we don't feel like we were listened to. I don't want the community to come back and say that. So that is one of my major concerns, is where that's going to be placed and any content that's going to go with to explain what it is and what it isn't.
Just want to add to that. Just first of all, Representative Patterson, thank you for your leadership of our committee. It's been, I think, a really great process. I do feel we've had enough community engagement sessions on this. I think it was a good hybrid of getting, people who are really true experts in this, who live and breathe it every day. I think they showed up and they really, I think, felt involved in those engagement sessions. I think they were very beneficial. And what I was excited about is when I went on to actually just talk to actual students, parents, and ask them the same questions. I got the same things, and they're all in the list that OSSI's put together through the feedback that we did with them. So I think the process is really complete. I think I want to thank our staff also for being at all those sessions. I know it's really difficult to do the evenings, and I think you just add more on, I think at this point isn't really necessary, but I'd also like to echo what you said and what Representative O'Leary said. And if the timeline doesn't work, if we feel uncomfortable about the design, I'm flexible to a timeline that works for our board. So I'll look to the leadership of you as our committee chair, President Thompson, and whatever timeline you feel, that we need to operate on, I'll support that timeline. But I'm really comfortable with the outreach. I think it's been, really, a good collection of different, parent, student, and advocate groupings in the city. So I just want to thank you for all that.
All right.
And so I would say that anything that OSSI brings us to the January working session, one, we're asking them to have stuff ready by the 22nd of December so that we can have some time before the January 30th, okay? Because we're working. And so that's one thing we're asking, but also anything that they share at that working session, that is before our monthly meeting with Dr. Grant. So if there's a request, okay, we're gonna need additional time, we want to provide extensive feedback or whatever we would like to provide to OSSI in terms of iteration, we can make that known. I think that's gonna be a critical part of the meeting on January, is that whatever they share with us, we all are able to clearly communicate to board leadership that, okay, we either want to push or move, these are our thoughts. Because that next Monday, that meeting on Wednesday, the next Monday, we have a meeting with OSSI leadership.
Yeah.
So we can make that formal request if that is something.
And like today, I know they were like, well, that's a January question. And I'm like, but you want a February vote. So like, even if the January question, because I'm guessing January questions are going to be the lovely display, like they're going to have some mock-ups. Like that's the part I want to take to the community and say like, does this make sense? What are y'all seeing? Is there something missing? Would you like this move? Like that's the thing that I would want some time to do, because I just feel like the surveys we're going to get this same information. So I'm kind of more like, I want people to start playing with the actual mock-up. So it would be nice if we had an adequate time for community engagement related to the actual thing.
Especially if it's substantially different than the
what we have right now.
Yeah, because that was kind of seeing that, in our last engagement, that was what people were responding to.
But I do think that we can get some type of alignment if it stays open till the 12th, and our meeting is the 21st, as far as what they give us to go into that meeting, so the imperative that they give us what they have, as much as they have that information, so that we can kind of come out of that with some recommendations.
Yeah.
So that we don't stop the wheel if we don't have to. But we would need all that information kind of pulled together. So when the committee meets and the responsibilities of coming to the full board.
What day do you open?
The 21st. So, which meets the 22nd, because everything stops on 22nd. We want to make sure they enjoy their holiday season as well. So that's why. So it is the 21st, so that we can kind of look at it, come out of that meeting going, yes, we can do this. No, we don't want this. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you guys can push them to give us that information, so we can have that information, specifically Kathleen and stuff like that, she put it together so that we can discuss it in fullness in that 21st meeting.
And in the meantime, would it be helpful like to send going back to the recommendation of like having the thing that we agree on for display as a board, would it be helpful like start sending committee ideas, or is that something we want to do or no? That like possible resolution related to.
Know what we're talking.
Can you ask your question again?
Yeah, a possible resolution related to what are the board's collective agreements related to the display for a report card and content. There we go.
Anything else?
Did I answer?
Yeah, I mean, if you have feedback to share with the committee. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. No, I get that part, but I was saying the last time we did collective agreements for the formula. And I think it'll be pretty congruent if we did a similar resolution of this is what the board agrees upon for display and content.
Yeah, I think we have, or you,
Yeah.
the members have to vote to approve it. And they're asking for a vote in February.
Yeah, but I think what,
No, we don't have.
Representative Reed is asking is the board separately gonna have like a consensus building amongst itself around what we would like to see on the display? Because at the last time, the committee was able to present a report with its recommendations, which Representative Patterson said he and Representative Williams will be doing with their committee.
Right.
And then I think from there, the next step would be, then what are the board's recommendations?
Right.
So you'll get a recommendation from the committee, and then we'll have a fuller discussion where we can add additional things. Like we agree with the recommendation from the committee, we agree, and we would like to add these things, or a section specifically that talks about the display. And then we would be able to submit, in an ideal world, where I said in my head that then we will be able to submit to our city a full board recommendation of these are the things we like to see, that encompasses not only the committee's recommendations, but also the full board recommendations around display and content areas. And that is before February vote.
Yeah,
Is that what you were asking?
I actually think that can happen and
Yes.
everything like that, that if we come out of the 21st, pretty much with what, what we are recommending. So then when we come back on the third,
Yes.
For the working meeting, that's presented, everything's together and everybody can kind of talk about it, to make it close, I guess, for some type of recommendation like we did last time, and then vote and work it. So I think it all works together for us to follow that same example that we had before.
And I also just wanted to say, it's going to die, and you asked about feedback breaking up around the survey. Kathleen also provided extensive feedback on the survey. So, and then we sent that to them. And some of it was even basic, but still extensive. And I think next time going to do it, we should just also give you all a heads up if that feedback was sent, and we send you all a copy of that. So I just want you to know that I heard you.
All right. Thank you, members, for your time and engagement tonight. As a reminder to our viewing public, the state board will continue to hold in-person meetings. The next public meeting will be held next Wednesday. It's earlier than we usually have because of the holidays. December 13th in the old council chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. This public meeting is being held 1 week early due to the holidays, as I said. Seeing no further business before the state board. One additional thing from Executive Director.
In January, there will be leadership elections. Anyone interested in running for state board leadership, there will be opportunity at the January working session to make a few comments about why people should vote for you, or to announce that you will be running. So just a heads up, that is something that will be on the January agenda.
Seeing no further business before the state board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Wow, a 2-hour meeting.
I'm gonna leave early to pick up.
Live, by the way, people. We are still live. It's
Oh.
not cut off.
Sorry.
That's the
Happy holidays.
Yeah.